What's up, church? So here I am today doing the thing that I said that I was never going to do, which is do live streaming. But today I'm only going to be on here for probably 10 minutes. I'm going to try to watch my time. And what I'd like to do is kind of introduce this new series in the manner that the series will be presented, which is via live stream. So what I'm going to do to the best of my ability and with the resources I have and with the intelligence that I have, we're going to take a look at the New Testament in context. Now, we're going to start with the book of Matthew because, it seems like the most logical place to start, to be honest with you. And it just so happens to be the thing that I have the most reference tools on hand for. Now, as many of you know, there is a program that I use a lot that I'm going to pull up over here, which is the blueletterbible.org web service. Now, they do have an app that you can use for your devices and things like that. But what I'm using is actually the program they have online, which is far more detailed than what an app can normally handle. So that will be our frame of reference from, the online perspective. But as another tool we're going to be using is a book that I picked up many years ago from a gentleman named Nehemiah Gordon. Sorry, I need a drink. Excuse me. Coffee on hand as always, by the way. And I've been watching him for quite a number of years, and he's a Hebrew scholar. He's very well educated. His credentials are a mile long, literally just got his doctorate on work that he's been doing on the name of the creator. So this guy knows what he's talking about, and he kind of approaches things the same way I do, which is, prove it. You can say it, but just because you say it doesn't mean it's true. What's your evidence behind it? So I'm like, this guy's cool. He is not a Christian. He does not accept Jesus as the Messiah. He's a Karaite, and so he only adheres to the Old Testament, and that exclusively. So he doesn't, follow the teachings of the rabbi or Talmud mission or anything like that. And again, his critical take on things is really what drew me to him. So he's got a couple of resources we're going to be addressing while we're moving through the book of Matthew. One of them is, this is going to come up pretty early in Matthew, obviously, because, Jesus is born. And it's a book here, and it's the naming of Jesus in Hebrew Matthew. And so what it does is it gives us evidence as to what his name was at that time and how it was pronounced. We have a lot of information now that wasn't available even in fairly short period of time ago because of technology. The books were out there. There was just no way for the average person to get together and to see those things. And so now things have moved forward so quickly, we're able to dispel a lot of things that have been questions for years, because now we're actually able to go to these texts and say, okay, well, what did it say then? And how was it understood? And put together the pieces of the puzzle. A lot of times it's easy to cast disparaging remarks on something that you don't know anything about because you don't know anything about it. And usually a person who does know something about it, their immediate response is always like, you have no idea what you're talking about. So we're going to try to get past the point to where we don't know what we're talking about and use some of the tools that we have available to us to get a better understanding. One thing I'm going to tell you, spoiler, I wish I could do that with a British accent. Your basic understanding of what Matthew is saying is you're not going to get a different picture of who Jesus is. You're not going to see him no longer as the Redeemer. That's not going to change. Okay. What it is going to do is it's going to give you a broader picture, a greater picture, and honestly, more often than not, this really beautiful mental picture of the ideas that are being brought forward, because the language itself is very much written to be memorized from hearing it. And so that requires words that bring forward imagery so you're able to remember it without having to rely on reading it from the page, because as most people know, in the 1st century, Bibles were not everywhere. All right. You went to the temple and that was pretty much it. unless you were super, super rich, nobody had a Bible on hand. So now it's completely different. Now everyone who has one of these has got a Bible in hand. So that's the first thing we're going to be dealing with, as in the book of Matthew, because again, Jesus' birth happens pretty much out of the gate. Another tool that we're going to be using throughout this entire process is this little bad boy, which is, and that book is actually written by George Howard, who is a professor. And we will get into this book more deeply. And what happened was there was, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but basically there was a document uncovered from the 1300s, I believe it was, that has the book of Matthew written in Hebrew. What's generally guessed, what the general assumption is, honestly, whenever you see a New Testament book written in Hebrew script, the assumption is that it was translated from Greek and then put into Hebrew. But because of evidence found in the text, it proved out that actually it was originally written in Hebrew, that it does not have Greek as its origin. And we'll show you, you'll see through evidences in the script itself, in the document itself, how it's pretty clear it could not have come from Greek. So we're not trying to bring some like harebrained idea. You can go as far back to Eusebius, who is one of the early church fathers. He was Constantine's right-hand man, theologically, as it were. Eusebius references in his writings that the book of Matthew in Hebrew existed in the libraries of Alexandria, I believe it was. And then you also get one of the disciples of John, who was one of the early church fathers, who also references the book of Matthew being available in Hebrew at locations that people would go and visit, and then they would take notes from. So that really shouldn't be such a crazy idea, considering these were all Jews and this all happened in a Jewish environment. I know that they were under Roman rule, and Greek or Latin probably should have been, but they didn't, because they hated their oppressors. Do you guys get that? They hated their oppressors. They're not going to do that. Even Josephus's writings, Josephus, who, if you know anything about history, Josephus, who also references Matthew in Hebrew being available at the time. Josephus wrote all of his works, even living in Rome, wrote all of his works in Hebrew, and then he himself translated those into Greek. So that matters, because when you see what the ideological differences between Hebrew and Greek mindset are, which comes through clearly in the writing itself, which is really where you see it very, very clearly, I don't want to say that you're going to get a different picture of what Matthew is trying to convey, but I'm going to say, in my humble but accurate opinion, you will have a more complete picture of what Matthew is trying to say. So watching my time here, I've got like 2 more minutes. So that's the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew by George Howard. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is this book, which we will be picking up as it comes up in the text, which is A Prayer to Our Father. This book was co-authored by Nehemiah Gordon and by Keith Johnson, who both of these guys are, live TV. Gotta love that. Both of these guys are very well versed in the topics that they're discussing. They spend a lot of time on them, and they do like deep dives that make the stuff I do look like just a rock skip off the surface, literally barely getting wet compared to what these guys go into. So what I'm going to attempt to do is I'm going to take you over to Nehemiah's website and show you he's got a lot of stuff available. This is not a commercial for him. It's not sponsored by him, but just so you know, these are other tools that are available. And this is coming from a completely different perspective than your typical, Christian works. This is someone who's an expert. His degrees are in biblical archaeology and a study of the scriptures. He's worked on the Dead Sea Scrolls. He literally just got his doctorate from Barlon University. He studied at Hebrew University of Israel. You can't get much more on in line with this. But he has a lot of things where what he does, rather than, which is the typical, and no offense to my Jewish brothers and sisters, but the typical Jewish approach is to try to dismantle what the New Testament says. Well, that's not what Nehemiah does. What Nehemiah does is he takes the texts that are available, and then he is critiquing the text as to what the text itself is actually saying, not what do other people say that the text is saying. So in his studies, because there was a question that was brought up by another ministry that basically was asking him, how is it possible that this passage in the scripture was basically saying that, you need to follow what the Pharisees teach, even though Jesus repeatedly says not to follow what the Pharisees teach. So that is how these two got together. And then over the years, more and more things, God has literally, the Father's really opened up many, many doors for these guys so that they would be able to open up a better understanding of what the scripture was understood as in the first century when it was written. So I'm checking my time here. It looks like I'm out of it. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. Everything will be done on rebroadcast, obviously, and then I'll try to the best I can throw in any special notes or anything like that I've missed during the show itself. So, all right, guys, thanks for stepping in. I'm super excited. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye. Let's see if I can stop it.